you believe it's been 2 years since the Duchess of Sussex gave birth to her son, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor? And birthday wishes have been flooding in all morning from his family. Oh, bless him. Meaning Meghan and Prince Harry are entering into just about every parent's nightmare, the infamous terrible twos. But apparently, new research says that reacting negatively to it can actually hinder their emotional balance in adulthood. Now, Kelly, that stage in our kids' lives can really put us under a lot of pressure, can't it?
Absolutely. I mean, Kaori is my youngest, and her and her terrible twos. I mean, her name, Kaori, means strength and determination, but I didn't quite think that through when it came to motherhood. She's really determined and she's really clingy. So if anybody, like, goes to, like, perhaps, you know, touch her or interact with her that hasn't been instructed to do so, then woe betide them. So there was one time that I was giving an address at church and I was on the pulpit and I could see out of the corner of my eye this person going towards her and I was thinking, please don't do that, because I know what's going to happen. They picked her up, she kicked off, started punching and screaming and kicking this poor woman. And I saw her, and she was, like, trying to walk her outside the door, obviously, because it was noisy and it was in church. But for me, I always find sometimes parents put a lot of pressure on themselves. And my son was the same when he was that young. And I remember he pushed me to the very, very limits, where I was like, oh, I don't know what to do with you. And I took him, I put him in a safe place, and I shut the door. And I left myself in the room to cry, let off some steam, calm myself down. And I think that, you know, lots of parents, you know, if you're in that situation where you feel like you're getting to your limits, you know, where you're thinking, you know, maybe of smacking the child or using a discipline action that is not appropriate, and you're at your limits. I just think putting yourself in a situation where you put some space away from you and the child, give yourself time to calm down. That's what I did. I called my mum and I was blubbering. She's like, what's the matter? I was like, he's drawn on the walls. I don't know what to do. She's like, OK. You know, so, yeah, it's just
because I'm in the midst of it, because obviously my two are still toddlers. Yeah. Florence is about 18 months and Alfie's 3.5. And I remember being in TK Maxx one Christmas and Alfie wanted this truck. He doesn't have tantrums often, but he was 2 years old. He wanted this truck. I was pregnant and he just had a meltdown. He screamed, he screamed, he screamed. And his dad was, Andy was with us. And I was like, this is so embarrassing. This is so embarrassing. He needs to stop. He needs to stop. This is so embarrassing. Whereas I'm of the school of thought of just leave him to do it and he'll get it out of his system eventually and then he'll calm down. But in the end, I had to, you know, when you do the rugby ball where you just kind of grab them like that, and I had to sort of drag him out of TK Maxx, hollering and screaming. And I just remember putting him down on the floor outside TK Maxx and just letting him finish it there. And I was like, when you finished, you can come and join us in the car. And I'd left him in the middle of the car park or anything. He was beside the car. And I said, you can just stay there until you finish. And then when you calm down and when you take a breath, then you can come into the car with us. Because I realise now that he just needs to get it out. And I know that will happen with Florence. He just needs to get it out and then they'll be calm.
So what about Florence?
Florence's tantrums tend to unfortunately be taken out on her brother more than anything else. She's a bit like yours. They're very different. They're very, very different. And she tends to pull his hair, grab his toys, and just yell in his face. And then I have to separate them. But she's not old enough for me to separate them and put her in a room and him in a room, because she'll just run after him and grab him again. So I think the whole leaving her to scream it out may not necessarily work with my daughter, but we'll see. What about yours, Jude?
Do you know what? I don't really remember them being very, like, having much tantrums, you know. I don't remember it at all. With my son, when he was, like, 2, you know, I was probably going through a lot of, like, hard times, grief and all the rest of it again. But I felt like they probably saw me, like, on my own as a single parent and saw me cooking, doing the silence. I thought, you know what, I ain't got time for no tantrum. This woman's, I'm going to be sitting there in tantrum by myself. So I don't ever, you know, I was blessed. I was very blessed. Both very calm babies. I felt like I more had tantrums when they were a little bit more older, when my daughter was about 9. And also last year in the pandemic, there was a point where I think my daughter was just fed up and she was like, I'm leaving the house. And I stood at the door and said, I'm 18 stones. Where you going? Do you know what I mean? I phoned my brother, was like, she's trying to leave the house. My brother was like, your mama's 18 stone, but I'm 20, and I'm like, right. So you got them 2 stones to get past after me. So I just gave her that look. I allowed her to kind of, you know, because they hold so much emotions, and there's different kind of feelings that you have. But if I'm honest with you, the kind of parents I grew up with, I didn't know what tantrum was until I was like 25. I didn't really even realise what.
But we didn't have tantrums.
No, were you even allowed?
Well, no, that's not even a word in the vocab. But I'm like Judi. I've been quite fortunate with my 2 that they don't really think tantrum. But Tanisha knows when it's like she knows the right time when to bring a tantrum. Her tantrum, and the one and only that I can remember, is when I was getting married and I'm in the church and it's all nice and quiet and everybody said, if anybody knows any reasons why these 2 should... So much attention. She got on a nice frock. What more do you want? It's my day. You need to just sit there and just stop you and hold that flower.
Brenda, I feel like you've really recovered and forgiven for that. It's like the emotion clearly.
Well, now I
just
give the eye. I just give the eye. It's just a look.
Yeah.